And the article in the October Toastmaster magazine will discuss how each member wins when we support each other in these competitions. Please give a welcome to John Anderson.
Everyone got their magazine, right? Mm-hmm. Page 22. Two paths to speech contests. There's two paths. The first is being a speaker. Now, when new people become Toastmasters, one of the first things that they begin to notice, that they've never really noticed, is all of the buts and so's and ahs, all the double words. Now, as Toastmasters progress, as we all are and have been, we start noticing gestures and eye contact and movement on the stage and vocal variety, all these more subtle cues that go into nonverbal communication, because it's the nonverbal communication that's really so important and that really makes a difference from one speaker to another. So I want to emphasize to you, each and every one of you today, to please come out to the events, because when we do, we all win. You win, and we all win. And that's the whole foundation of Toastmasters, is creating that safe space for people to experiment and to grow in. And the contests are just as important as the meetings. Many, many Toastmasters only come to meetings, and they think that that's the entire world. And they say, well, I don't want to get involved in all of that organization stuff, all that political stuff, all of those contests. I did that once, it was 15 years ago, and boy, I'll never do that again. There's a challenge to being a contestant. The main challenge, as Wendy and all of us who have ever competed, is our nervousness, is our fears, is our emotions racing. And what's underneath that is our fear that we're going to forget our lines. We're going to stand up there and go stark, dumbstruck, and then have to run off the stage and you know, feel terrible of what we did and why did we forget and why can't we remember. And what we learn as we develop as Toastmasters is this is really a one-to-one conversation. And the more that we're able to make it a one-to-one conversation, then we don't have to remember nearly like we did at first. And we become much more effective as communicators when we're speaking and having one-to-one conversations with each and every person that's in the room. We're able to be spirited and vivid. Now there's a challenge when we're a volunteer. The biggest challenge is that there's frequently not enough volunteers to conduct an event. It takes a lot of people in the room to create an effective event. And the other one is that I may mess up. I may be the timer and hit the red light before it's time. Or I may be a ballot counter and I count the ballots wrong, incorrectly. Well, that's why we have 2 timers at contests. And that's why we have multiple ballot counters with a lot of built-in systems to prevent those kinds of errors. New volunteers are frequently afraid that they feel that they're intimidated. They are intimidated because they're all of a sudden they're on this volunteer team and everyone on the team is so professional, and I haven't done this before. So if you're a chief judge, I hope that you explain the roles very, very carefully. And if you're a new volunteer, then look at the speech contest rule book, read it, and then you'll feel a lot more confident about what those things are that you need to do to be an effective volunteer. So You don't have to be a contestant. You don't have to be a volunteer. Just attend. Because if you're out there in the audience and the call goes out, we've had a last-minute no-show. We need a judge. We need a timer. Then you can step in, and you'll be quickly trained and helped to be effective in the role. And when you're a timer for the first time, you're usually sitting next to a very experienced timer. And you can just sort of watch what they do. And you've been timer a couple of times in the club. The same thing with judging. And there's events where you can be trained. You can go to events and you'll be trained to be a certified judge. That you can be effective as a good judge, and that'll make you better as an evaluator, as Tom was just pointing out. Evaluators are of crucial importance. A couple of examples of the wonderful things that we gain when we attend events like Saturday was Yoshiko, who was the stewardess, telling about the not-so-friendly skies, in which she gets a chair and she's talking to a passenger, and then she's the passenger who's holding this very large child, and she's the stewardess, and she says, "Oh, honey, how old are you?" And the child goes, "I'm 3." And the mother goes, No, she's really 1. or the passenger who has a service dog, and the dog is going like this, and running wild, and then relieves itself in the aisle of the aircraft, right? I don't think this is really a service dog, really a service animal, entitled to free travel. Now, Jeff Hodges was very amusing, because Jeff was talking about working for Hooters and wearing short shorts and prancing around the stage and having to flirt with the customers and getting fired because he wasn't as effective as they needed him to be. Now when it came to Wendy, Wendy was great because she used her finger to point and to emphasize and to talk about, my husband always helps me find my keys, but he never corrects my English. Or when she clenches her fists and then she opens the palms of her hands to dramatize the frustration of speaking English fluently. But it was the last piece that she did where she's describing the conversation between a Chinese worker and a Greek worker, and the Greek worker is humiliating the Chinese worker for not pronouncing Friday, when the Chinese worker finally says, and she leans forward and she says, "It's Friday, you dumb Gleek!"
Very good.